Hi guys, so this is our comic script writing session. This is I, Adam Bessie, writer and full-time professor of English here. And we have also Arthur King.
Arthur King with the art and digital media. I'll be helping you guys later on with the art component of your pieces. Basically inking, formatting, how to digitize them, if you will, or how to format them for production.
Wonderful. And Arthur, you can tell, is the artist because he has a cool background, whereas I'm in my garage and you can see all the books and the girding and, very, very different. Now, that said, we're working on comics and the two are not so different, hopefully, as you'll find. So what I'd like to know before we really get started is I want to just know kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, everyone just message me this. How familiar are you with making comics? So a 1 would be you've never made a comic before, you're a total newbie, which is great. And a 10 would be you make comics all the time. So I want everyone, if I can just have you, please just sort of give me a sense of what we've got in the room here. You don't have to chat publicly, but privately is great. A 1 would be, I've never done this. And again, if you've never done it, this is a great time to do it. And a 10 would be, I am an expert. I should be teaching this lesson, Bessie, and not you. Arthur's a 10. Yes, he is a 10. I don't know. Some days I feel like a 10. Sometimes I don't. All right. So everyone just give me a number privately so I can just sort of have a sense of how to pitch this presentation. So again, what we're doing here, guys, I'm going to admit a new person, is we're going to talk about some basic storytelling techniques for comics or any kind of visual medium. Hello, welcome. We have someone named Crystal that's just joined us. Hi, Crystal. Hello, welcome. We'll come back to you.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Crystal. I think you're the Crystal that was in one of my classes before. Hey, Crystal.
Yes, I am.
Oh, awesome. Great. Well, welcome in.
Welcome. So guys, this is going to be an interactive session. I'm going to do a bit of talking and all of us are going to kind of make some comics today. We're going to come up with some ideas. So how about some paper, pencil? You don't have to draw anything today, but we're just going to learn some basic techniques. We're going to learn kind of 3 things today, main things. We're going to learn something called story arc, which is how to compose just a 3-panel comic, like structurally, not the drawing part, but just conceptually. We're going to learn about something called story shapes, which is invented by a wonderful author named Kurt Vonnegut. And then we're going to talk about how do you actually write a script for a comic, which is kind of in between a film and its own thing. And during this, we'll talk about your own stories and things you're interested in. And so if I can have one last chat before we get started, I'm going to share my screen. All right. What are comics? How many folks here, chat me if you recognize who this is? Give me a chat if you recognize who this is. I would like to hear from you. C and H. So Calvin and Hobbes, right? Arthur's being funny saying that. Who here is familiar with Calvin and Hobbes, one of the most famous cartoon strips of all time? Chris says the first comic I ever got. Crystal, yeah, it's very canonical or famous. Christopher, can you tell us about what's so powerful about the Calvin and Hobbes work in general as a comic? When people think of comics, this might be one they think of.
Okay.
Sorry, the other Christopher. I apologize. There's 2 of you, Christopher D. But I'll get back to you. Don't worry.
No worries.
Well, I guess, I mean, it's just in terms of writing, it was always just one of those comics that was either really simple and you thought like, oh, this is just a cute little kid doing his things, but also really deep messages and intense messages underneath it. When I became that and then Bill Watterson's just draft skills, especially later on in life when he was doing some of the more nature landscapes or bird renderings that he would do, was just insane. I mean, the guy's drafting skills were just incredible. I don't know, I could go on, but it was one of the first, I think I found it in the 3rd grade, one of his books. I think it was like the Martian one, and with Spaceman Spiff. And it just really, I don't think I've ever laughed harder on the shenanigans that kind of he got up to, particularly with his parents. It was just really relatable. Now that I have kids, my own kids read Calvin and Hobbes, and it's absolutely one of my children. So it just, I don't know. It's just,
Well
yeah.
said. My 8-year-old reads it as well. And so what I wanted to ask you is, for many of us, we think of comic strips as maybe being comics or comic books. What I would like for everyone to chat is the name or names of any comics or graphic novels or manga that you have read. So let's just take about 2 minutes to do that, because I think before we talk about writing comics, we need to know what it is we're talking about writing. So I'd love everyone to just share, if they can, just list out any comics that you know that you've read. Don't worry if the rest of us don't know what it is, but it could be anything from something you read in the paper or something you read recently. If you're a one, you don't know much about comics, just think about some comic you've read. So I want everyone to chat me some comic they've read, or graphic novel or manga, or something that has pictures and words together. Natasha Harris says Garfield. That's one of my personal favorites. Crystal, who's in the graphic novel class, has read Mouse and Bitterroot. Bitterroot, it's an amazing book. So is Mouse. Bones, Ezekiel says, one of the best books ever. Akira, wonderful manga, as is Nausicaa. And then Sin City, a very different work. Pinocchio, Vampire Hunter. Naruto, and One Piece. Hey, Ivan, can you get on the line for a minute and tell me what this is? What comic is this from, Ivan?
That's actually what caught my attention in terms of, like wanting to attend this meeting. Yeah, I caught that. It's Naruto.
Naruto, yeah. That's why I put it in there, because I knew if I did my own stuff, nobody would look at it. But if I put Naruto in there, I'd trick people to come in. So one thing that we learned, guys, and welcome to who's just come in. We've got Peter O'Neill is talking about Spider-Man, Batman, Watchmen. We have Peanuts. We have Naruto. We have Akira. One thing about comics is it's a medium, not a genre. So what's the difference between the two, a medium versus a genre? So I saw here someone's in the graphic novels class. I think that was, I just saw that. Crystal, you're in Professor Carrick's class. I helped design that class many years ago and taught it for many years. Can you tell me how would you define comics since you've been studying them?
I was actually talking about this for the first thing, but comics are like a medium where like they can encompass any kind of story. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, well, you're great. We hear you perfectly.
It's like painting or like writing and stuff like that. It's just that comics are stereotyped by what is usually seen with comics. Just more like less serious kind of stuff. So comics can be any.
You there you are. Comics can be anything, yeah. And the word comic suggests funny, correct?
Yeah.
But the idea is anything you could do in a film or in a novel or in theater, you could do in comics. It could be funny, it could be serious, it could be horrible. So when we talk about writing in comics, anything that you could do in any other medium, you could do in comics, but you'd have to do it in a visual way, right? So there's like, if you're going to produce a play, you can write for a play and that requires certain things. If you want to make a movie, again, that's writing and it requires certain things. If you want to make a podcast, that's an audio medium. You can write that. You could do anything with that. But comics are a visual medium. They're not a genre. It can be anything you want it to be. So whatever story idea you have, as we saw from those examples, could work. So real quickly, I want to know if we have another person being admitted. Well, welcome. Does anyone already have an idea for something they want to write about? Welcome to new folks. So I'm just curious if anyone already has an idea for something they want to write about for our comics contest. So Crystal, since you were just talking, I'm going to have you if you can give us an elevator pitch in 1 minute of what you're thinking about making your comic about, that would be great.
Me?
Yeah, since we already had you talking, why don't you give us an elevator pitch, Crystal?
Okay, so my story is called Defective by Creation. It is a world where it's inhabited by a race called stickmen, which are like humans, but pretty different. The concept of the world is that most people are created, just like poofed into the world. And there's a certain the Genian government regulates what happens to these children, and there's some that are called defects that are made with disabilities that are killed. So there is this one defect called Dave that survived due to his mother Clarimond being able to save him, and he and his family lives secluded on a cliffside that wishes to change the world and be able to live up in the free world. So he fights for that, starting a revolution and stuff like that.
Whoops. For a whole entire world, you summarized that very well. So, thank you. Give Crystal, it's not easy to just like pop out your story. So what Crystal is working on is sort of fantasy, sci-fi in that genre, correct? And there might be other elements. Does somebody have a very different story that they're putting together? That sounds like it might be a graphic novel. Am I right, Crystal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone else have something that is much different than that in terms of genre and in terms of space? Like, is anyone here just want to do a comic strip like Garfield? I would love to read someone with a comic strip. Yeah, Sequoia, what were you going to say?
I had a couple ideas with regards to old familial experiences that could be condensed into maybe an 8-panel comic strip or 9 panels. And
So maybe like personal experiences. Who else is thinking about, welcome Katie, taking some personal experiences and turning that into a story?
Yeah, that's kind of more where mine is.
You want to tell us a little bit about yours, Natasha, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's much simpler. And I just had during quarantine, I had an experience with crows. I had some baby crows fall in my yard and I kind of kept one for a little while. So now I'm obsessed with crows. And so it's going to be a story about like a baby crow and a mom, and this baby, she's teaching the crow to fly, but there's all this crazy stuff happening below them, us humans, all this crazy stuff that we're doing that he's like, no way, I'm not gonna fly, I'm not going down there, kind of a thing. And then in the end, so I would show different crazy things, and in the end he would fly.
I keep forgetting I'm muted. I like that. That's really fun. Right. And very different from what Crystal said, right?
Yeah.
It's very different from what Sequoia said. And I know that Katie was at our last meeting. And Katie, could you, thank you, Natasha, for that. Could you briefly describe what you're interested in achieving with this project, your project?
Like the story that I want to tell or what I want out of it in the end?
Well, what's the story you want to tell? We were just talking about right before you came on the call, comics can really take any genre or any kind of story you want to tell. Yeah.
Yeah. So mine is a personal story. I got sober almost 2 years ago, sober from alcohol specifically. And so a lot of the healing journey, I didn't go to any Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I didn't do anything like that. I just